witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and this video is your May Witchy Folky video, where we're looking into the British Almanac, the Italian Almanac, the Roman pagan festivals, and what was happening in May that is magic and witchy. Let's look into it. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi. And if you like what I do here, you can directly support my work there with a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me, Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. All my profits from tarot reading go split between Coaches to Gaza in support of Palestinian refugees in Cairo and the Good Law Project now, which is looking into how to protect trans rights and human rights, and they are the same thing. So if you decide to support me there, thank you so very much. I'll be honest with you, we need to do a premise here. I think that it's beyond ironic that we're here talking about cutie witchy thingies while the last month has been a dumpster fire. And probably after I film this video, I will film a video that is just a rant recap of what the fuck has happened in this country in the last month. But you know, I promised that every month, since you people liked it, we would do this dive into the almanacs. And you know, it's nice to try and reconnect to a kind of tradition that doesn't actively try to hurt people, which is what traditionalists and conservatives that appropriate traditionalism try to make you believe. So, without necessarily having to go there, if you like the idea of the olden times when things were easier, A, they weren't easier because my grandparents were breaking their backs in the fields being farmers, but also these are traditions that possibly are not hurting anyone. And if you think anything different, you are a reform voter, you are a TERF, you think that this ruling is fine, you need to get the fuck off my channel right now. And don't worry about leaving a comment because I'll block you. No, I have no fucking patience, no fucking patience. I was tempted to say in this video about Angela Alwyn and that darling being a racist. I've made a post. I'll speak specific. I have a point in the rant video about that because nobody deserves defense by silence. Like, if I find out anything about anyone that is anything less than decent to their fellow human beings, I will not stay silent. That being said, as we started in the last video for April Witchy Things, the first thing was Roman festivals. Now, there's not much of Roman festivals that I know of or acknowledge for May, but there's the Lemuria. And the Lemuria were related to the celebration of the dead. Now, you would think that May being this fertile, going into summer, all about life, Calendi Maggio, the night of the 1st of May, it's all about orgiastic rituals for fertility. So what do the dead have to do with this? I think that life and death were very much intertwined and seen as intertwined in antique Rome and in olden times in general. They are two sides of the same coins. Don't worry, I don't like it either, but that's, you know, I kind of understand why. Interestingly, something that was happening in Italy, we will go more in detail about it, but for Calendi Maggio or the night of Walpurgisnacht, San Walpurga's night, was literally the idea that it was very similar to Samhain, Halloween, despite being the opposite on the wheel of the year. So there is this thing about life and death and the night and the bonfires that is sort of overlaps, which again, you wouldn't think for the opposite of the wheel of the year, but it kind of works. So I'm not surprised that then during May there are the Lemurias, which are in honor of the beloved dead that are deceased and honoring them and looking to find supporting them and giving them offerings so that they support you in return. Most of what we discussed about May was indeed the Calendi Maggio, which I discovered here in Wales, maybe unsurprisingly because Wales was a Roman colony. Wales has the Calan May, which is literally Calendi Maggio. The Calends was the beginning of the Roman month, and then the Idis was the middle of the month. So yeah, Calan May or Calendi Maggio, 1st of May. We discussed about the 1st of May though in the last video because I knew that this video would come out the first Sunday of May. So more information about that, just because you're curious about Beltany and everything, it's in that video. In Celtic places, like indeed the UK, Beltane, 1st of May, is the celebration of 40 days after the equinox, and so you have the celebration properly of the Cailleach, basically, which is the crone goddess that goes back into the earth, and some places have Bridget coming out to replace her, which, let me I know about it because I knew that Bridget was already an Imbolc thing. So the fact that she endures and there's another Wheel of the Year festival that is just for her was something new to me, but do let me know. The British Almanac mentions that, but I'd like to know from like personal experience or personal stories. What did your grandparents tell you? Moons, let's look into moons. Until the 11th of May, we are in crescent waxing moon. So as I mentioned in the other video, any kind of magic that has to do with attracting, bringing together, bringing to you, make it grow, it's some kind of magic that you do until the 11th of May. It's good for attraction, it's good for growth. It literally follows the sympathetic magic of the moon growing bigger and bigger. Makes sense. The 12th of May, we have the full moon in Scorpio, which by being a full moon is in direction opposition to the sun, which is currently in the sign of Taurus. I think Scorpio gets a bad rep, and I don't feel like it should. It's a water sign, but if there's a way to describe it, it's the fieriest of water signs. Does it make sense? In my perception in this, because it's passionate, I genuinely perceive it as the boiling water in a way, and there's all these exuding level of emotions that are given such a prominence. And I don't think that is by chance that it's ruled by Mars. I mean, in the new, not just 7 planets, it's ruled by Pluto, so we're still there. But Mars was considered the lower octave of Pluto, and before the last 3 planets were discovered, you know, we were working up until Saturn, and Mars was considered the lower octave of Pluto. So yeah, Mars that is so fiery, that's actually ruling Scorpio, that is though a water sign, you can tell we're probably the feeling of it's a very fiery water we're going to. The full moon in Scorpio is considered a time where the focus is about seeking and transforming. Now I kind of get the transforming because the water adapts to the recipient, to the vessel. Make sense? Just me? And honestly, for how things are going, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a good time to do spells for justice. Why Scorpio? Why not Aquarius? Well, one, we were not having a full moon in Aquarius until July, August, because it needs to be in Leo. But anyway, the fact that it seeks and it transforms and it has this passion and it comes from emotions, I don't know if it sounds familiar to you, but for how the last month has gone, I do feel that that's the kind of energy that needs to be brought forward. The world has convinced me all my life that you need to be reasonable and with a list of things, with facts, you need to be rational about things. And what has happened in the last month has just come to show that it means squat if you actually know your things, have your list, follow things. You just need money to be right. So, to be completely honest with you, I feel like the time of being reasonable and putting together our lists and putting together our reasons to be reasonable, that's fucking nothing. So we might as well go with our guts, and if all it takes is going out and protest and shout, let's fucking do that, because being right doesn't mean anything. Being rich makes you right. So 14th to the 20th of May, we get into waning moon. That is a time where it's interesting to try and reduce things, push them away, protect, banish. The 20th to the 25th is balsamic moon, which is literally the last sliver of the moon, and that is the best usually when it has to do for protection and banishment specifically. So if you have a Saturday between those days, do we have a Saturdays between these days? Because I haven't written it here. We do. The 24th of May is a Saturday, and then the new moon is on Tuesday the 27th. So honestly, yeah, Saturday 24th, banishment and protection, that's your day. It's ruled by Saturn, it's in balsamic moon. Let's banish turfs and the patriarchy. Seems like a good plan to me. The 26th and 27th of May are part of the new moon, because the new moon actually happens on the 27th of May, but at like 4 a.m. here in the UK. Really, the day that you're going to do spells for the new moon is Monday night, the 26th. The new moon is a moment where you plant your seed for things then to grow in the next moon cycle. And this new moon is in Gemini. Now, the issue that I don't have with Scorpio, I have with Gemini. But, you know what? Everybody changes their mind or have the exception that confirms the rule. And to me, that exception is Imogen from Sapling Tarot. Possibly because their moon is in Aquarius, so we have sympathy for that. Gemini is a sign of air, so it's all about mental stuff, communication. I'm Aquarius, so I understand air. I'm a fixed air. I have very rarely had very good experiences with Geminis. But again, you have the exception to the rule. Imogen, I love you. And what is relevant here for this new moon in Gemini is that it's considered a moon in which you can start work that have to do with, guess what? Communication. I find it interesting that the British Almanac goes specifically in communication and being true. Because, in my experience, Gemini is the kind of sign in which you adapt things to sound like the truth. Make of that what you will. So it's interesting that the point here is stuff that has to do with communication and being true. I understand that sometimes communication is weaponized in what sounds enticing or acceptable or considered impossible if you're good at communicating. I think that that is usually what got us into this mess. Oh no, everything sounds reasonable. It's the way that they lure you in. So just in case, considering that this new moon is in Gemini, let's try to take the nice part of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, and so it really has to do with communication. And being true, I think, is not necessarily the most natural thing for something that has to do with Gemini, but it's an effort that it's worth doing. I have no qualms for everyone in this video. I'm taking everybody down with me. Now, something that I didn't mention last month is that the Almanac this year is focused on megaliths. Like, I think every year it has a different kind of theme, and I think it's very witchy, the fact that the theme of this year are megaliths. And the megalith for the month of May is the Beltany stone circle in Donegal in Ireland. There are 64 stones, and apparently there is a history of hills on which Beltane bonfires were actually lit up, and you would make cattle walk between these bonfires so that they would be purified. I can only think of Wicker Man when the girls jump over the fire. By the way, am I the only one thinking that Wicker Man is actually a very good film with a very good moral? No? Just me? Also, the interesting thing is that it takes in consideration the constellation of Gemini, probably because, by the end of the month, we do get into the sun gets into the sign of Gemini. And it explains the story of the constellation of Gemini from the Celtic point of view. And so according to the Celtic lore, rather than the Chaldean, like when we started the constellations that we have now, the two figures that are in the constellation of Gemini were actually two knights of the Round Table under King Arthur, who have such Welsh names that I should remember. Wait, do I have? No, I haven't written them down. Give me a second. There are these two. Okay. I got it. There are these two knights, two of Arthur's warriors, Gwythyr and Gwyn, who both fell hopelessly in love with Credlad. Anybody that thinks that King Arthur was in Glastonbury should study more about Wales. Just say. Anyway, these two warriors, one of them, this woman, is promised to, the other, no, I can't accept it, I'll kidnap her. So Arthur, to try and bring balance, is like, no, you know what, on Callum May, 1st of May, you actually are going to fight every year until the end of time, and then by the end of time, whoever has won the most actually gets to marry Credlad. And I think it's interesting because it even mentions it in the Almanac, the fact that Credlad is... Credlad. I should know Welsh better than this, but yeah. How would you read this, my love? Again?
Credlad.
Credlad.
Not Croe.
No. Crae. Crae?
Credlad.
Credlad. We have settled on Credlad. Mara, if you're watching and I'm butchering your language, I'm so sorry. Do let me know what's the proper pronunciation. Credlad, we're going at the moment with. Anyway, they both want to marry her. One she's promised to, the other one cannot accept it and kidnaps her and bring her underworld. Sounds familiar? Even the Almanac says, oh, it has interesting echoes to the story of Persephone. Just putting it out there. And also about the fight of the Holly King and the Oak King. Credlad. I mean, yeah, it's written C-R-E-I. Credlad. If I was actually reading it in Italian, I would have read it better. Credlad. We have times and movements of the sun for May. So just to give you an idea how it works here in the UK, We are well into our legal time, which I mentioned in the last video. The UK has too much light in the summer. I'd rather we didn't have legal time, just solar, but you'll see why in a second. So the sun starts to rise in the northeast because we're getting closer and closer to the north. That's the reason why then on the 21st of June, on the circle, polar circle Arctic thingy, they actually have 24-hour days, which I do not. It's a bit weird. It's all to do with the inclination of the Earth, but it's a bit intense. But it's the reason why we have seasons. So you win some, you lose some. So on May the 1st, the sunrise was at 5:30 a.m., which is a bit early if you ask me. The sunset was at 8:30 in the evening. It's a very, very full day. That's fine. But by May 31st, the sunrise is at 4:30. We keep getting hours here of light. And sunset is at 9:30. So we've taken an hour in the morning and one in the evening. We have 2 more hours of light. Isn't that enough? It's so hard to sleep already. Okay, but yeah, just so you know, thankfully this should chill a bit after June, but Yeah, right, the sea. So, you know how last time I mentioned Torquay and I was absolutely convinced that it was in Cornwall? No, shame on me, it's in Devon and it's in the south. But most importantly, I found out that other places that talk about the sea that actually are here in Wales, to the west, so actually I'm gonna use those now, it's Llanelli. It has a double L twice, so it's Llanelli. Llanelli.
That's the best you can do.
Llanelli. 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 I love Wales. And the thing about Llanelli is that at the moment, the average sea temperature is 11 degrees. I say party, bonfires, let's go into the sea every day. I could. Not quite, because Cardiff doesn't have a beach and I always talk about it, I lament it. By the way, there's a book out by Brett, the Witch of Salopia, about Sabrina, who is the divinity, the deity of the River Severn, technically until West Wales from Bristol, actually from before Bristol. This is not the sea, this is the River Severn, but it's tidal and it's salty, so opinions. But technically, yeah, Moon Books has this book out. I was actually sent it, I haven't read it yet, but I love Brett and it's very local to me, so I actually want to get into it. So if you're, for some reason, interested in the Severn that touches upon Exeter and Somerset and here South Wales, there's that. The tides go along with the moon, so when you have new moon and full moon, you have spring tides, those are the high tides. They're really high when they're high. When they go low, it's a great time to go forage for anything that you would want to find on the shoreline. I wonder if sunfire is one of those things. It's very hard to eat. Sunfire, very hard to eat for me. Like my stomach cannot digest it because it has the almost woody kind of inside. But if you're into that thing, sort of a sea asparagus, kind of nice. Again, if it wasn't so problematic for me to digest, I would really like it. But yes, that is actually something that you cannot plant, you can only forage, and you forage it on the shoreline when the tide is down. Hey, it's also good for, apparently, words that I didn't know before, rock pooling, mudlarking, and coastal fossil hunting.
It is good for coastal fossil hunting.
This is what the British Almanac gives us for May. Let's go to Italy. Fuck no. Not literally. Fucking hell, Italy had fascists actually out doing the Roman salute throughout April and May.
Call it the Nazi salute.
It is the Nazi salute. It is the Nazi salute. And nobody does anything. Actually, yeah. The 25th of April, why should you know if you don't live in Italy? You don't need to know. The 25th of April, though, it's the celebration of Italy being liberated from fascism, because the Allied forces, the Americans, landed in Sicily and then started to go up the peninsula. And then by the 28th of April, they got to Como, they found Mussolini, they executed him, they brought him back to Milan, upside down, the quintessential hanged man, but it has nothing to do with sacrifice there, it has to do with retribution. And you would think that as the country that has invented fascism, and we all know how bad a word that is, that people should remember, like it's just 80 years ago. Yeah, no, if in Italy right now you say that fascism is a bad thing and you are an anti-fascist, you will get the police to mark down your name and signal you in like their records as somebody to watch. But if you are one of the black shirts that go and do the Nazi salute, remembering Mussolini, remembering fascists, you have the police cordoning around you, protecting you from counter-protests. So if you're wondering what the issues are with Italy, that is the tip of the iceberg. That's the reason why I don't live there anymore. And I'm lucky not to live there anymore. I do not take this for granted. It's a privilege. Anyway, that being said, let's talk about Italy and May. A little bit of a history lesson there. So we have talked about San Valpurga and Calen Maggio in the other video, so that is covered. But we are on the 4th of May and we're going forward. What else happens? So just to be clear, because North Italy especially had Celt influences, we do have Beltane. Maybe not in so many words, but we have that kind of celebration. We have the tradition of the 2 bonfires through which cattle has to walk to be purified and protected for the season to come. And we also do have, as I mentioned at the beginning, the perception that the beginning of May has to do with the dead as well. Because on the 3rd of May, which is Santa Croce, which is a Christian holiday that has taken over the festival of the Bona Dea. The night of the 2nd, so the night before, people went around, especially children, but people as well, went around villages in a tradition that is very similar to trick-or-treating. Like, you would go around expecting to get bread, eggs, focaccia. Girls will also go around getting treats, and if you don't give them, you get cursed. So it's very trick-or-treaty, but it's just Italian. So I think that it's just one of those things that, what is it called? Convergent evolution. In Piedmont, apparently, where I come from, little girls used to do it and go house by house, still in the 30s, in the 1930s. So remember when last month we talked about the Rogazioni di San Marco e di San Giorgio, and how there were these crosses made of olive branches put in the fields to protect them from bad spirits, thunder, the wind was seen as little devils going around. Yeah, if that hasn't been done during the Rogazioni, it's done at Santa Croce as well. Like, you put the crosses on Santa Croce, St. Cross, in the field for that kind of protection. So one or the other, let's just make sure. Speaking of the wind and how it's seen as devils, on the 3rd, still Santa Croce, it's also the day of San Filippo and San Giacomo. San Filippo and San... I don't know how to translate Giacomo. Jack? I don't think there's a San Jack. There must be a better way. Huh?
I think it's James.
No. It could be, though. St. James, yeah. James Giacomo, yeah, fair enough. Is Jack a contraction of James?
Can be. It's very strange when it comes to it.
I mean, you don't have a King Jack, but you have King James. I give you that, okay, fine. So yeah, San Filippo and San Giacomo on the 3rd were literally asked to banish the little tornadoes of the wind, thinking that they were spirits. And because we talked about last month about the little winter, these very cold 10 days that were considered to exist at the end of April before going properly into summertime, that's probably what it was related to. There's a specific scongiuro, so a specific rhyme that you use to ask San Filippo and San Giacomo to banish this devil. Consider that this scongiuro is in Sicilian, which is not exactly what I speak, so if I do anything wrong and you're Sicilian, I'm sorry. Il 1° di maggio era, c'erano i diavoli per l'aria, facevano una gran fiera. Lampi, tuoni e saette, San Filippo e Giacomo, amaro chi non credette. So yeah, it's about believe that they will help you, and they will. If you don't believe in it, it's not gonna go right for you. Why is Christianity always about fear? Isn't that an interesting point? That's something I forgot at the beginning. The 22nd of May was actually a pagan Roman festival called the Rosalia. It was all about roses, and it was for Flora, the goddess of vegetation, and Venus, indeed, in antique Rome time, with Christianity that has been overwritten, becoming the Marian month par excellence, which is the month dedicated to Mary. I think traditionally May is considered the month in which Mary was born. It's basically a way in which Christianity, as we talked about in the video of Vesta, tried to overwrite and replace pagan beliefs with their own. going along with whatever kind of celebration there was already, because you can't take it away from the populace. But you can definitely overwrite it. And so in time, when we were celebrating for Venus, is now celebrated for Mary. And it still has to do, of course, with fertility and femininity, because there's only so much that you can change to the populace mind. The 22nd of May is also Santa Rita, which I think we talked about in one of the Italian videos. Santa Rita is considered the saint of impossible causes, because the legend of how she died is that it was winter and she asked for a rose to be brought on her deathbed, and they were like, no, she's delirious with death and everything. But they go outside, lo and behold, there is a bush of white roses in bloom in the middle of winter. They take a rose, I think they bring it back. Yeah, they bring it back. She had a nail in her, a thorn or a nail in the center of her forehead from a cross, and then she got stigmata. After Santa Rita, we get to the Ascension. Now, as I said last month, the Ascension moves because it's always 40 days after Easter, and Easter moves. How does Easter move? Thank you so much for asking. Easter is always the first Sunday after the full moon that comes after the 21st of March. So, if you have a Sunday very close to the 21st of March that comes after a full moon, the end of April can be Ascension. This year specifically, because Easter was I don't have it on the calendar. Easter was on the 20th of April, which means the Ascension is going to be on the 29th of May. Now, the 40 days exactly after Easter, always a Thursday. I think since the 70s, the Catholic Church has decided that because they celebrate stuff on Sundays, you know what, it's going to be the Sunday after. But all the folky magic, folk Catholic, heretic Catholic that we make magic with, but we don't call it witchcraft in Italy, is going to do, is actually going to do it on the Thursday, because that's what traditionally is. According to Easter and the Ascension and all of these, so Easter is the day that Jesus Christ is resurrected after 3 days that he was dead. And he stays around for 40 days, still doing stuff, miracles and all. On Ascension Day, 40 days after, he ascends, body and everything, to the Father in the sky. And we believe in magic, okay? Because of the concept of the ascension, and he ascends in body, and so the body is healthy, there's a lot of lore about the physical ailments that are cured during the ascension. So health magic, really? Because, you know, the body gets physically elevated in the sky. There's also the hope that if it rains on Ascension Day, the harvest is going to be magnificent, amazing. There's this connection to water. And speaking of connection to water, there's another tradition that comes from South Italy, and I think very specifically Sicily. In Sicily, there's the belief that at midnight on the Ascension, so the night between the Wednesday and the Thursday, at the moment of midnight, the seawater around the island of Sicily actually turns to fresh water. And if you get into the water at midnight, that water that turns fresh water because it's the Ascension, and so there's the magic of Christ ascending, that water cures physical ailments. So I think that there are places in Sicily where people still get into the sea at midnight, the night of the Ascension, because of that superstition. Interestingly, the Almanac suggested that people that don't necessarily have a seashore close to them still had a sort of tradition that goes similar to that. So if the sea was not an option, there's a ritual we can do at home still today, says Tiziana Granata, who wrote the Almanac. Get a bowl of water with rose petals and mint. Rose petals may make sense. Leave it outside with a little light or candle next to it. So supposedly because of the candle, Jesus finds it and it turns it magically into healing water. In the morning, then, you wash your face with it to be purified from spiritual and physical ailments. Because I'm a maniac and I'm autistic, the idea of leaving a bowl of water in the open in the night terrifies me, because surely bugs get into it. So I would put like some sort of netting, one of those bags that you put vegetables in, kind of thing, so that it's protected, but stuff doesn't go in it. That's me. Also, Italy does this thing about magic water a good few times in the summer. I think there's a night in June that I don't remember off the top of my head where we do this as well. Like we leave a bowl out, or we get, the first, what's it called? Rugiada. Dew, morning dew. It's dew, isn't it? The water on stuff early in the morning. Dew. Dew is rugiada. The dew that you collect on certain days keeps you young. I'll find out in June what that actually is, because there are a couple of nights in June when you do this. The issue that I have with the dew is the same. It comes from stuff that is just out. How are there no bugs there? How is there no stuff? I don't know. I'm autistic. I have my things though. Yeah, apparently we do a lot of stuff also with eggs. You know the egg cleanse that a lot of people do, and there's literally a subreddit for it, even for people that are not witches. Yeah, I'm not surprised if that comes from Italy, because we do that kind of thing of reading the egg, whether it's yolk, whether it's just the white, in water, a lot. Apparently something that you used to do at Ascension was reading the egg white for romantic purposes, to find out when you would marry, who would you marry, that kind of thing. Something that surprised me that I didn't know is that there was a lot of focus on milk. And so, for the Ascension, in Central and South Italy, there's this tradition that on the Ascension, you cook everything in milk. To the point that there's a pasta that is boiled in milk and made in milk, which I like the idea. I used to eat rice and milk. Rice and milk is something that we do in Piedmont. And I know that when you cook savory stuff with milk, it actually is really good. It doesn't sound like it if you're not used to it. I'm thinking of milk steak now. But no, it's not that. It's good. It's actually good. And then, yeah, Tiziana brings in that there's also an emphasis on fire. There's emphasis on fire. There's emphasis on air. And there's emphasis on water. I would argue that there should be emphasis more on the land. But there is, because you put the cross to protect the land. We pay attention to our elements in Italy. That's very, all-encompassing. So yeah, the point of the fire and the air really was the fumigations, the bonfires that you jumped across, again, Wicker Man. And fair, let's purify. What purifies better than fire? I would argue that not only water is healing, but also fire, because, we're into the end of May, because the 29th of May is the Ascension, and it's at the end of the month this year. There's not much at the very beginning of June, so I'm not going to give you anticipation for June here. I'm going to see you the first Sunday of June, where we're going to talk about the folk tradition of Britain and Italy for the month of June. But specifically, in case you're interested in Saint Magick, the first 13 days of June are dedicated specifically to Saint Anthony, Sant Antonio, who is considered in some legends sort of the godfather of Jesus. It's weird. But most of the iconography that I remember of St. Anthony is St. Anthony with baby Jesus. So the perception was that it was the godfather. I don't know. Can you tell me more? I know that Grace, Mary Grace Faroon, the place, the town that her parents came from, the patron saint was St. Anthony. So she has experience with St. Anthony. So maybe I should hit Grace up and ask her, by any chance you're here, Grace, do let us know about St. Anthony, because I have this vague memory, but I don't quite remember. That was it for May 2025. Do let me know if you know of traditions of your region, of your country that happen in May, if anything overlaps, because as you can tell, even between the UK and Italy, stuff overlaps, because convergent evolution. I do invite you to use the full moon in Scorpio and the new moon in Gemini to combat injustice, because we need that fire. Oh, but Scorpio is water. Yeah, but it's the fire of water. And until the next video, I really hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because fuck me if there's need for it.